Good morning, everyone. We are here today with Sarah Henning, owner and principal of Shiftive, a career development and talent acquisition consultant group out of Nashville, Tennessee. We're very excited to have Sarah with us today. We were actually connected through a mentor and advisor of mine who was actually the speaker for our very first virtual happy hour a few months ago. So got connected through Lindsay, and we're excited to have her on today. So Sarah, I'd love for you to just start by giving us a background, and then we'll dive into those details in a little bit.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I started a little bit about my career path. I started with a financial planning a large Fortune 500 planning company, and I held a bunch of different roles, but primarily during my time there was in recruiting and talent acquisition, and did that both at the corporate level and for local regional offices, and also served as an internal consultant. And then also spent some time very specifically focusing on developing internship and college recruiting for them. So really delved into the youngest set of the talent pool that they were hiring from. And from there, spun out to start my own consulting business to work with both people who are looking for jobs and companies who are looking to acquire top talent.
Great. Thanks for that overview. And so can you give us a timeline there? When did you make that switch?
Yes. So I've been doing my own consulting now for 5 years. Prior to that, I was with that company in all of those various roles for 10 years. So got the experience of moving around and having career mobility within the same company, which was really, I think, unique for people my age, especially. You see a lot of movement typically between companies. And I loved that experience because I was able to really key in on my growth and learning by staying with one company and seeing all those different facets. So it's great.
Great. Can you talk about Shiftive and tell us what that is?
Yeah. So Shiftive came out of really getting to spend all that time as I was recruiting people and then helping them onboard and really launch their careers with the company that I was working with. What I realized is I loved helping people make the connection with what a great career fit might be for them, and then also have that growth. And I also liked working on the side of working with the leadership teams and the development teams there to help create systems around training and development and mentoring to help people have the best possible experience to maximize their career growth. And so what I decided to do when I started Shiftive was really key in on those two areas. How do we help individuals who are really looking to make a career move or career advancement really key into the things that are going to help them not only be successful in their careers, but bigger picture, happy overall? Because we spend so much time working, right? So career growth, career development should be really tied to what you want your life to look like and what brings you joy and happiness too, right? So that's really sort of the crux of a lot of the coaching that we do with individuals who are looking for career development, career advancement. And then on the flip side, there's been so much talk about millennials for so long. Gen Z is starting to kick up as well, because that's, the youngest sort of demographic generation moving into the workforce. And so the only constant is change, right? And so businesses need to learn how to be adaptable and understand and how to learn and grow and adapt so that they can retain that top talent and get the right people in the door that fit their needs. And so I love that part too, that fixing the puzzle pieces of how do we make your business really kind of sing and come to life so that it can be a really good marriage between what you need to accomplish from business perspective and making sure that you're making people really happy so that they want to stay and they want to be productive and all of that.
Great. Well, you touched on a lot of things that I kind of I don't know which direction to go in right now. But first, I guess the first thing would be, obviously with COVID-19 as a response, I'm sure you had to pivot a little bit because this area of development, is so applicable right now because people are losing their jobs, people are making changes in career. There are new careers being developed right now as we speak. So what has your specific role looked like and how has it changed as a result of COVID-19?
Well, I feel really lucky that from the start, I had a client base across the United States. So I was working virtually all along. So my pivot to my business model actually didn't really change that much. What did change was, I think anytime we have a disruption, people evaluate all the big things in their life, whether they need to evaluate out of necessity or because they've been disrupted. So
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that really changed about in my business is that I had more of an influx of people from the career search side coming in and wanting to talk, to say, hey, I'm looking for jobs, I'm applying, I want to think about what I'm doing. I really thought that would taper off as things kind of started to settle in and businesses settled in and could kind of figure out where they're going forward. And I think it hasn't, just because now what's happening is people are taking a look at how their companies have responded to COVID-19 and said, was there good leadership there? Was it handled well? Are they responding? Are they responding the right way? And layered on top of that, now everything that we're seeing with the issues surrounding Black Lives Matter and Black social justice and equality, same thing is happening. We're kind of going through that cycle again, where people are really looking at the value system and the leadership and how they're leaded through change. And then I also think people are taking a look at saying, how are we? What did my organization learn from COVID-19, and how is our business changing going forward? And some people might like that things aren't changing too much in their company, and some might be saying it needs to change and what isn't happening. So I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen, is just the bigger influx of people saying, hey, I want to be looking at what my future looks like right now and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've been able to adapt really well, and there hasn't been a huge pivot in your business model, like you said, which is lucky,
Right.
because there have been for so many people. So
Right.
one other thing that you mentioned when you were talking about Shiftive as a whole was the the changing landscape from millennials to Gen Zers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in hearing about that dynamic, and I think a lot of others would feel the same way. So can you talk a little bit more about that and working with those two generations?
Yeah, I think so we're in an interesting space right now, because what tends to happen anyway is that when you're on the cusp of a generation, on the back end or the front end, you tend to take on characteristics of both. So really the Gen Zers that are starting to emerge are going to feel a lot like millennials in a lot of ways, because they're closest to that generation. But I think what people are starting to realize is millennials are not still 20-year-olds, right? I think that's been the phrase that's been used for about 10 years, 15 years now, that millennials were just described as 20-year-olds, but really millennials now are 40 to 40, depending on your definition,
Right.
to 25, right?
Mhm.
And so Gen Z is coming in behind that. Um, so far, the leading research indicates that some of the biggest differentiators, and the ones that I am really seeing actually the most in the people that I'm talking to, I would say the two biggest differentiators are also the things that are going to be the most interesting in how we move forward in business,
Mhm.
which is millennials tend to be a lot more collaborative,
Mhm.
and Gen Z can be collaborative, but they're more competitive.
Mhm.
And so if you think about those two characteristics, they butt up against each other a little bit. So I think it will be really interesting to see how millennials lead Gen Z to capture
Mhm.
that competitive spirit in an environment that they're looking to really collaborate and solve business problems, to meet goals, all of that, kind of create a great work environment, all of that piece of it.
Mhm.
So that's, I would say, one of the biggest observations that I have right now of the biggest generational shift. And obviously that'll have a lot bigger implications
Yeah,
than just
it
a couple.
will. And but I mean, I'm fascinated by it from a platform standpoint for the Opro, because right now we make up, it's 21 to 39 year olds. So we're right in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah, you've
So
got both generations.
so as we move forward in the future, it's going to, the Gen Z side will start to outweigh the millennial side. And so I think it'll be really interesting when the millennials are the ones leading Gen Z
Yeah.
in full capacity. So I'll be eager to see. I think that's a great partnership for us in the future as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm mindful of time, but one thing I want to point out before asking my final question is it's really cool, and I'm sure really cool for you to see how your path has, you know, gone and kind of woven together. Might be the best way of looking at it, just from the start, and hearing when you started in the corporate world and kind of taking you to looking through your path, and seeing where you've landed now. There's so many points that you can take away. So it's not surprising to me that you're doing what you're doing now, and I'm sure you would feel the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's interesting about my path, and I think the biggest learning that I've had that is I really try to express it to clients, and I see it in really successful people, is that um, hold loosely to what your career expectations are going to be, but don't sacrifice having goals. So if you would have told me when I walked out of college with a teaching degree that I would have worked for a financial planning company for 10 years and then started my own business, I would have said, wow, you're out of your mind, right? Like that's not the path for me, right? And career paths are never, I don't think really great career paths are really linear. There's times where we have exponential growth. There's times where we have hard left pivots. There's times where, you know, stuff you take a step back maybe even in what you're doing so that you can launch forward. Like I always say the slingshot analogy, take a step back so that you can really launch forward. And you just never know. And I think the people that really anchor into owning their own career growth and development and really pursuing knowledge, skills, and self-awareness are the ones that actually create a long-term career for themselves that's really meaningful. A big thing that I point to often is if you ever look at the resumes of some CEOs, not all CEOs, or really a lot of chairmen of the boards for big companies, their experience can be all over industry, right? And so I think that that's one thing that I always like to share with people is own your career path, but really invest in developing yourself more than being so specifically laser focused on what your long-term end outcome is. Hold loosely to that long-term end outcome, but know what you want your goals to be. How do you want to feel in your career? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What are the accomplishments that are really important to you along the way? And how can you find the right careers and organizations to help you achieve those things?
Yeah, I think my favorite part from what you just said was that career paths really shouldn't be linear. And I think that's something that the Yoprono started on, like that idea. And so I'm really happy that you shared that. So to wrap things up, I always like to ask interviewees, what drives you? What motivates you?
Yeah, this is always such a big question because I feel like I'm motivated by a lot of things, but really it kind of all comes back to how I'm able to have impact on people to help them achieve the best version of themselves and what success means to them. And so I'm really committed to having that kind of impact on the people that I work with.
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to end the interview. Sarah, thanks so much for being with the Yoprono today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.